And we are live. I believe we are live. I hit the button. It says we are live.
Yep. I'd say we're live.
Okay. I think we're ready to go.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to what I hope to be a new series here on either the IF channel or maybe spinning this off on another channel. We'll see soon. As you can see, I'm using the wrong logo in the background and everything, so we'll get that sorted out. But the goal here today is to kind of kick off a series of discussions about communication and advocacy. So that's what we'll be talking about. I'm Justin. I'm going to be hosting the series, and joining us for this first show here is Randolf Richardson. I cannot speak.
It's okay. I know who you meant.
And so we're going to talk about his experience here, and then kind of explore what I mean by communication and advocacy. But if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do quickly, I'm sure everybody watching is already aware.
Okay.
But, maybe sometime in the future when this has, it's the only video left in the world for some reason, that we can get your information out there.
Well, in that case, I'm glad to be part of this. My name's Randolf Richardson. I recognize everybody in the audience so far. And I run an organization called Canadian Atheists. We're a national atheism organization that advocates for the elimination of stigma and the countering of vilification of atheists in Canada. And hopefully this also will influence people throughout the world to also consider making this change. I think it's a very important one. One of the campaigns we push forward is normalizing atheism, because we believe it's normal to be somebody who doesn't believe things. We want it to be just as much acceptable as it is for a theist to say that they believe in one or more deities, that goddesses or gods, that atheists can also freely, without persecution, without vilification, without being stigmatized, saying that we don't believe in any deities. It is something that is protected under our constitution here in Canada, but people still do make some kinds of efforts. There's one person in particular who's quite well known. His name is Dr. Jordan Peterson, and he a few years ago was saying that atheists are all Christians and that we just don't know it. Obviously, that's not correct. I disagree with him on that. And then the other part of it is he had a follow-up question from Matt Dillahunty on what to him a real atheist would look like. And Jordan Peterson's response was that a true atheist would be like Raskolnikov in the Crime and Punishment novel. It'd be going around murdering people. That's obviously also false. So he's perpetuating bad ideas, wrong ideas. Ideas that perpetuate the stigma, unfortunately. So we do, unfortunately, have this kind of bad style of communication, of misinformation going on here in Canada, and that's part of what we're pushing back against and trying to change people's views on. Because what I generally find in my own interactions with theists and atheists throughout the years is that there are some really good people, really nice people, and there are some really bad people. And most of the people are somewhere in between on the spectrum. And it's pretty much the same in both demographics. So that's, I think, a very powerful way to demonstrate that we're normal like anybody. We're just people, just like the theists are people, and we all deserve to live well in society.
Isn't it interesting how, just to kind of tag onto that, when Jordan Peterson said that, atheists would be murdering people, and the notion is that if you're an atheist, then you believe that, and he takes, no gods exist. I don't believe in a higher power. I only believe in myself type stuff. And there's nothing out there. There's nothing to judge me. But it's like, if we assume that that's the case, like why would you just go on a killing spree? Like why is that what you turn to? You know, it reminds me of at Penn Jillette. I don't know if it was like a lecture or it was a Q&A, but he was like, you know, I've murdered exactly how many people I want to murder, which is 0.
Yeah, I remember him saying that.
0. Like that's how many people I want to 0. And that's, you know, I've done it. Like it's just
I'm with him on
bizarre.
that. I'm with them, and almost everybody I know who is an atheist, as well as most theists, the number is about the same, I think, in my estimate, are people who don't want to hurt anybody, don't want to murder anybody, don't want to cause problems for other people.
Yep. Real quick, before we move into the topic, I believe some of the advertisements for this had Jenna on the link. She won't be here today. Maybe in the future, but she's on her way home from work right now, so that we'll have to catch up with her next time.
I do see her in the audience, so hello, Jenna.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're at least tuned in. Thank you.
Just ping her and get her ideas via chat.
We missed you and your purple hearts here.
Yeah,
she always puts a purple heart in the chat when she says hello to people. It's very nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I want to talk about, and I briefly described it before we went live, is that I've spent quite a bit of time listening passively and actively participating in lots of conversations in lots of different communities as a moderator, administrator, or just, you know, participant over the years. And what I've seen, and this isn't everywhere with everybody, but there's a lot of cases where as science advocates and science communicators, as atheists, as skeptics, as people who feel like we're on the right side of reality, you know, we have this notion that as long as we kind of deliver the facts in a way that we feel should be well understood, then our job is done as far as communication and educating people. So, you know, we get into these debates, or we get into these, you know, Twitter conversations or Discord or wherever it may be. And it's like, you know, here's all this information. Here's the facts. It's your fault if you don't understand it. And, you know, I've seen that, and I've seen it more and more. And I think a lot of it has to do with just being impatient, and having poor communication skills, and just not being truly interested in getting getting the intended effect of what you're trying to do, right? So it's wanting to educate and teach and give people the facts, but it's avoiding the responsibility and the effort and the skills and the science and understanding behind how to effectively do that, because it is a lot of work, right? And we would never allow this in the classroom. And that's something that I keep thinking about is we, you know, the way that we talk to each other on social media, on Discord or anywhere else, is we would never accept that, especially as far as like the education part of it. We would never accept that in a classroom, because we know that's not how it works. We just know that we don't have to put in the effort, but we also claim that we want to teach people and we want them to understand, and those just don't go together. So I want to like start a conversation or a series like this to have conversations about that. And you know, I'm gonna talk to people that I think are particularly well, either intentionally communicating effectively, or just by happenstance, their methods and form of communication and just the way that their demeanor is and the way they approach conversation just seems particularly effective.
Yeah, I really appreciated it in high school. My Mandarin and math teacher, and also my English teacher, and others as well, were always available after school for helping out with things that they didn't have time for in the class because they had 25 to 30 students to teach, right? So more than one-on-one in Twitter and other places, I think you've identified a serious problem with communication, because I've seen it happen too, where people are, it's understandable. People don't have all the time in the world to teach people everything as well. But if somebody's trying to get some kind of a concept communicated, I do agree that there is a certain onus on them to try to really make sure people are understanding it. And, in the past, when there's audiences on television, audiences watching a television, the television host has no idea what the audience is thinking. They don't know. And so, they're hoping people are understanding. But now we're more of an interactive age. We have these great opportunities and wonderful tools that allow people to communicate directly with us while we're presenting. Like here in YouTube, we have a live chat right now where people can actually raise questions if something doesn't make sense or they need more specificity or something. So yeah, we have these tools. We should really use them. It's because it can be very helpful. I've had a bit of a struggle throughout my life. I don't always pick up on sarcasm and satire, and because I have a tendency to take things more literally, so all through my life. So it's something I've been working on for a long time. And so when I ask questions, sometimes my experience has been that, oh, why didn't you get that? How come you're not understanding? Everybody gets this kind of attitude. But excuse me for a sec here. But I forgot to shut my phone off. I apologize. It's at the other part of the room there.
Oh, it's okay.
So what happens is sometimes the response will be quite negative. Oh, why don't you understand? Everybody else does. And, in public education here in Canada, we've over time come to the realization over the last 30, 40 years that every person has a different style of learning. And very often people have multiple ways of learning. And so part of the job for a communicator, just like with a teacher, is to find out what methods work really well with your students and with your audience. And if you can cover a couple of them together and even combine them, you can get your idea better understood to multiple people. Some people are visual learners. They need a picture on the wall, on a blackboard or a whiteboard or something, or on a TV screen that's back there, and or projected or something. And others do very well with an explanation. They can process mentally and draw their own picture in their mind of it, if that's what they're doing. And so there is having some kind of awareness of this fact that people have different styles of learning. And not everybody learns the same way, I think is a real benefit to any presenter or anybody who's putting forward any kinds of ideas.
Yeah, I think we're doing both ourselves and our intended audience a disservice with the way that we typically communicate, and by not utilizing these tools and methods and just our broad understanding of how people actually learn and what constitutes effective communication. There's a lot of studies, there's a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of information out there as far as becoming, a better communicator, reaching people and connecting with them in a more meaningful way. It's a lot of work, right? I think that's the big thing, is that, when there's a teacher, it's their job to relay this information in a way that that the students are better prepared and equipped to deal with society, right? But as even from scientists themselves to science communicators to people that write science like press releases, and then to online people, YouTubers, debaters, people who write articles and who advocate for atheism or skepticism or whatever it may be. If it's not your professional role, it's basically it's just a lot of extra work for what may not feel like is worth it, or you're not getting benefit, or it's just a lot more effort. So I think it just boils down to like I said in the beginning, is taken on that responsibility, that onus of actually trying to deliver what you're saying that you're trying to deliver.
Yeah. Yeah. There's one example is an idea I've been working with trying to get across. I don't think of myself as the best communicator. I do try to improve on it. And when I've been in debates and other interviews, I put them on a memory stick that I listen to in my vehicle while I'm driving afterwards. And then as I'm listening to it, it's because I want to figure out where I can improve the way I communicate things, as well as the way I argue things when I'm in debates, and what I could have done better, and try to remember it for the next time, and work on my own approaches. And sometimes I'll even listen to things and, wow, I completely missed what this person said. Like there's a debate I had in December on 2021 with a Muslim named Nadir Ahmed.
Mm-hmm.
It was a modern day debate, and he made a point later on in the debate that I completely missed. And had I caught it at the time, I could have thanked him for that massive concession that would have made it very clear to everyone in the audience, I think, that I'd won. But I didn't do that. But that's okay. I don't actually go into the debates with the attitude of trying to win. I go in the attitude of them of hoping that they will present something that'll cause me to change my mind. This leads me to an idea that I have tried to present sometimes, though, because I do find that there is also an aspect of audience expectations that can play a role in this as well and create some distortion. One example is there's a black and white fallacy that comes up quite a bit when it comes to propositional logic, for example, where somebody will make a proposition. They'll say, do you accept the proposition is true? And if the person says yes, great, fine, you move on, and it's what you wanted. But if they say, or whatever needs to come next to support it or whatever. But if they say, no, I don't accept the proposition, that's all it means, is you don't accept the proposition. The mistake that often comes up is that, oh, well, then you must think the opposite is true. But that's not what people are doing. And so I came up with a way to try to get people to understand that. So like an example of a proposition would be the Canadian flag, as you can see right behind me, is made up of red and white. It's a red color and white, and they're together. And you accept the proposition, most people say yes. Now, if you say no, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be made up of green and black, which could be somehow opposite, but it's going to be, they're just not accepting that it's red and white. And there could be reasons for this, like they're colorblind and whatnot. But what I'll say to people, like if you're considering propositions as meaning that you're completely taking the opposite point of view, then consider this one. In the children's game of rock, paper, scissors, if I ask you to accept the proposition that scissors is the winner, and you don't accept that proposition, well, the other two options are not exact opposites. Which one do you pick, right? And so this, I've found I've been partly successful with this in getting people to start to realize, oh yeah, this is how propositions work. This makes sense now. Now I see where I was going wrong. And sometimes with communicating ideas, we need to have some kind of an example that shows things in a different way that can kind of get the point across why there's a certain line of thinking that could be problematic, but do it in a way without, it's the hard part is doing it in a way without saying, oh, you're wrong, this is how it is, And so kind of a nicer approach definitely helps, because people will be more receptive to accepting the option of changing their view on it, right?
Yeah, I think the last part there, and your approach to conversations is the key takeaway from that, and that going into a conversation, because not every conversation should be a debate. And that's the first thing that we have to learn is not every conversation is a zero-sum game where there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So sometimes the goal of the conversation is to just have another conversation later on down the line, right? And that's probably actually the goal most of the time if you're trying to have a meaningful impact on somebody's worldview and their foundational beliefs, because those aren't going to change overnight or in a single conversation. So the goal, in my view, should be maintaining communication, maintaining connection, and building rapport with people, because if we were all perfect logic robots, all it would take is a sound argument to modify every position that we hold. But it doesn't work that way. We can only update our beliefs on things that we are convinced of, and it can be the most perfectly reasonable and rational argument with all the evidence and facts in the world behind it, but it doesn't mean that it's convincing. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and there's a lot of ways to work through that to eventually update and change your mind. But it can take a lot of time when you're talking about something that's very foundational. So just approaching it in a way that is patient and with patience and understanding, and actually like legitimately wanting to understand and communicate with that person and take on board why they believe, and even at least consider their justifications for it, and kind of compare them with your own for whatever your belief may be compared to that. So doing that rather than just debating or regurgitating facts, or what we normally see as like almost like sea lining or gish gallop, where it's just you just drop a whole bunch of links and a whole bunch of data, and you don't give them time to process it or have a talk about any individual piece, and you just keep dropping more and more and more, and then, well, my work here is done. It's all on you now.
What did you mean by sea lining? I'm not familiar with this term.
So the sea lining is it's a tactic to it's kind of like a way to politely ask questions, but in a very, very continuous, disruptive manner.
Oh, wow!
So it's a way to like kind of ruin a conversation, but by not being rude about it.
It's like subtle trolling in a way.
Yeah, and it's not always intentional, right? So
Sure.
you could say something that's relatively, or it could be interpreted several ways, right? But I interpret it in a very negative way. And so I just keep asking questions and questions and questions about it, and I don't give you a chance to respond or explain yourself. But my questions are not intentionally harmful or mean, but they just don't open the door for clarity and an explanation.
Yeah, subtle disruption. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I'd have to look up like the exact, but there's a really good infographic of a conversation that involves sea lining. I'm gonna find it, but but it is a way of like subtly disrupting a conversation. That's a good way of putting it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It sounds pretty devious, actually.
Yeah.
So, but like you say, sometimes it's not intentional. It's just a communication style. So,
but it's not intentional in that they don't know they're doing it, but they know that they're ruining the conversation, or they have no interest. They have no interest in keeping the conversation from devolving.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. One of the other tactics I've noticed that comes up, and I call it a tactic because it seems to me like that's what it is people will start questioning another person's credentials.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it in an attempt to try to discredit them instead of paying attention to what the argument is. It's when I'm working at companies and management positions in the past, there's sometimes the person who has nothing to do with the job at hand happens to be in the meeting. Like a good example would be a janitor in the meeting just cleaning some stuff up. They're putting their brooms away, and then they hear something, and then they have an idea that actually helps the company. So it's reasonable to assume the janitor has a vested interest in their company doing well. And it's a different perspective, and these different ideas can be helpful. And so basically the underlying point is just because the person doesn't have credentials doesn't necessarily mean that they can't contribute in a positive way, in a meaningful way. So
yeah, that one's kind of I wouldn't say that it's difficult to wade through, but it could go kind of goes both ways to some degree,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah.
an
That's right.
individual conversation, or if somebody's like really trying to contribute to a field or understanding of a system or something at work, they may have really good ideas and relevant experience and stuff, and just not have the official credentials, right? And that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But if they're trying to overturn, the entire scientific consensus, then I'm not saying that just dismiss them out of hand, but they got a lot of work ahead of them.
Yeah, and one of the important things there is for a person to it's not impossible for a person to do that, but they're going to need to know how to address their audience, who are going to be scientists. They're going to expect to see citations and references and an abstract at the beginning, and perhaps a set of positions.
But that's not the route that anybody goes anymore. Well, no, the legitimate scientists do. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But
you're talking casual conversation, not this. Yeah.
I was going to say the people that want to make sway public opinion on a scientific topic without actually going through the proper channels and publishing work and stuff like that. They write books about it and they do podcasts now. They don't even involve the scientific community.
Like Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, they completely go around and they become a media personality or social media personality.
Yeah.
And write books. And it's very difficult to give any pushback on that, because most scientists are not out to
debunk
people. Well, they're out to debunk people, but only within their community and in their field, right? They're not really good. They don't have enough sway typically and enough financial security to just go out there, debating people in public, because it might look bad on their employer or whoever is funding their projects and stuff like that. They just want to avoid controversy.
And on top of that, the person who they're pushing back against, who has a large audience, may end up finding they get some members of their audience who do have credentials volunteering to help the misinformation campaign.
I mean, just imagine, imagine a psychologist, just any random psychologist, not like the famous ones that are writing books, just any random PhD psychologist, like just debating Jordan Peterson in public. Like their career would be ruined because his fans would just harass them to the end of time.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah, and that stuff does happen.
Yeah. So I do have this this here. I want to show you.
Okay.
So let's see if I can make this big. It's big for me. I don't know if it's big for anybody else.
Yeah, it's a little hard to read, but that's better.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, I'm going to full screen it here.
We can read it now.
So it says, I don't mind most marine mammals, but sea lions, I could do without sea lions. Don't say that out loud. Pardon me, I couldn't help but overhear. Oh, now you've done it. No, this is the sea lion coming in. I would like to have a civil conversation about your statement. Would you mind showing me evidence of any negative thing any sea lion has ever done to you? Go away. There's no need to raise your voice. I'm right here. I'm just curious if you have any sources to back up your opinion. You're in my house. You made a statement in public for all to hear. Are you unable to defend the statements you made? Or simply unwilling to have a reasoned discussion? Told you, dude, sea lions. I've been unfailingly polite, and you two have been nothing but rude. I'm trying to eat my breakfast. Very well. We shall resume in an hour.
That sea lion looks very friendly, but boy. So I just, by the way, I heard sea lining before, but I don't always hear. So sea lining, that's my fault. And I saw it in the chat. Someone mentioned sea lining. Dargendorp.
That's my fault. So I don't know if I explained it well the first time, but sea lining is
you did fine.
Like I said, it's a way to politely completely take over a real conversation and just question everybody on everything. But basically say that you're the one being reasoned and polite and stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of like
I think that cartoon illustrated what you were saying earlier about what it is quite well. So
Yeah, it's kind of like a malicious compliance
yeah,
of I'm going to be really annoying and really polite about it at the same time.
yeah, yeah. Some of them they do this even before debates. Like I had one guy who wanted to uh, know what all my references and citations were going to be beforehand, and basically probably turned the debate into a fight over the references. And I just didn't go for it. So yeah.
Oh yeah, so yeah, fight over references, fight over definitions, fight over
Oh yeah, that happens too.
but yeah, in debates or in a debating type format, debating type conversation, these are used to derail the debate. They're intentionally used to stop a conversation. It's basically a way to make the other person quit
Yeah.
without ever even talking about the topic, right? Because you just never get into it.
Subtle trolling.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, that would be obnoxious. Yeah.
I don't want to get too deep into the actual the science behind like effectively communicating and the heuristics, and there's a lot of stuff that causes people to believe what they believe and
Sure.
hold on to these beliefs, and there's ways to improve your chances of affecting change in people. I'm still not like super well versed in it. I've done a lot of reading, but there's a couple of good videos out. I have one posted on my Twitter. I'm gonna repost it in the comments on this video when we're done here, that I think everybody should watch at least once.
One of the things I've noticed happens too is people will actually try, like a salesperson will, to try to get a person to change their mind, and then they see it as victory when that person changes their mind.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is they could both be wrong in the end.
Right.
Imagine the time before people understood that Earth is not the center of our solar system, and people convincing others that we are at the center.
Mm-hmm.
They're both wrong at the end. That's the actual facts.
They're both wrong, but they're perfectly reasonable, right? So
Yeah.
it's you can be both, and that's something that I think we struggle with, that probably more than anything.
Yeah.
Or just as much as anything else, is you can be perfectly wrong and perfectly reasonable at the same time.
Yeah.
Now, the argument is not sound because the premises are invalid, right? Or
Sure.
the premises are false, but you're still, as far as you're aware, they're true, and you accept them to be true. And the argument is valid, and so you're reasonable to accept it. If you accept the premises are true, then it's reasonable to accept it. So if I've never traveled the world, if I never went on a submarine or a plane or anything, you could probably, with enough time and effort, and if I had very limited travel, convince me that the world is flat. You know what I mean? If all you've ever seen was a flat surface and you have no understanding that it's anything else, you can convince somebody of that.
Sure.
And they wouldn't know any better.
Yeah. And it's not unreasonable for people to conclude that with limited knowledge before, because if they hold a ball and they let it go, it doesn't stay there, it falls down. They're assuming the whole universe works the same way.
Right.
So it's once better understanding of these things came along, then ideas began to change. And like we specifically don't try to deconvert people from religion with our organization, Canadian Atheists. What we do is, if people have questions, we'll gladly talk with them. And I think it's important that when people are convinced of something, that it's been primarily them working on figuring it out for themselves, because that way it has a more lasting effect for them, and it has more meaning for them, I think. And that way they're not pressured into it. As soon as somebody's pressured into it, there can be a relapse where they at some point talk themselves out of it and get back to where they were before. And I think that this is a much freer and better way to go. Intellectual sovereignty, I guess, is kind of what I'm promoting. And I guess this is veering off a little bit from what we're saying, but
no, that's fine.
Communicating ideas, I try to do it in a way that doesn't tell people that they have to change their views.
Yeah, yeah. I
which is
think
a bit counter to what we're trying to do in a way, but I
it's
find that it's more successful that way because then people will raise other questions and then we have a good back and forth, right?
it's counter. It might be counter to our intuitions,
Yeah.
right? But we should know better that our intuitions are not always correct.
Yeah.
And they're not. They don't always lead us down the right path. And this gets into, like I was saying earlier, with people that are trying to educate and advocate and communicate. We should know better. We should actually look into what works and what doesn't work, and look into and use the tools that are available, and the resources that are available, and the scientific understanding of how this works, because um, forming these connections, and it's sometimes it's put into like tribal terms of bringing people closer to your circle and closer to your tribe, and connecting with them, even if you don't agree with them, opens the door for a lot more collaboration and communication down the line. Because what we're seeing, it was one thing that I think of is about halfway through last year, or I think it was actually like right at the beginning of the pandemic, a little bit into it, there was this popular saying that we're fighting two pandemics. We're fighting a viral pandemic and a pandemic of misinformation.
Yeah.
And the pandemic of misinformation was is caused by a whole bunch of things. But they did a lot of studies on where it's coming from and where it's primarily circulating, and it's coming from some of the big players in the anti-vaccine, big organic alternative medicine,
Yeah.
a lot of like alternative industries, holistic medicines, that kind of stuff. And they were pushing down all this misinformation, but where it was circulating and spreading was in totally benign groups of people that were knitting and playing and gaming and social clubs and bowling clubs
And chiropractors.
and chiropractors, but like all of these almost totally non-scientific, non-related to anything groups, where people actually have connection with each other, like real strong human to human connections. And when you're in that type of group, you're far more likely to believe what the people are telling you without questioning it and looking into it too much, even if they don't have the credentials and the to back it up. Just because that's your people, that's who you trust,
Yep.
and you're gonna trust. You're probably gonna trust your neighbor of 30 years more than you're gonna trust a doctor on TV. You know what I mean? So, because in the U.S. we're like, hey, trust Dr. Fauci, trust Fauci, trust Fauci, but then we're also like, oh, do not trust Dr. Oz, don't trust Dr. Oz. And the people, some people are like, why one and not the other, right? Or why, or
Which
they've
is a fair question.
yeah, or so they trust the one that they like for political reasons or for personality reasons, or whatever it may be. Why trust this doctor over the what's his name, Robert something, the guy who's going around saying he created the vaccine.
Okay.
But he's like a legitimate scientist who did work on the vaccine. Or the technology behind the vaccine. He didn't work in the actual manufacturing process or anything, but he's on TV, he's on podcasts talking about it. Like, why not trust him? And it's, we tend to dismiss people like that out of hand and say, he's a quack, he doesn't know what he's talking about, he's just spreading misinformation. Yeah, Robert Malone, thank you. We tend to dismiss them out of hand, but we don't put in the effort to explain why we should not listen to them, or we shouldn't trust them, or whatever it may be. And so the attacks on people like that, if they've already gained some trust, or some people already have some concerns, the attacks on people like that just feed into the concerns over what they're talking about. It's kind of like the conspiracy theory that, you know, all the evidence that's missing to disprove the conspiracy theory or whatever is part of the conspiracy, right? So it's just it's in a tough spot when we don't take into account like what actually what people actually relate to.
Yeah, and you see, when you've got people who are giving actual medical advice and advising whether or not to get a vaccine is medical advice.
Yeah.
The credentials do matter. That's part of it, definitely. And, you know, how impartial is the person being who's making the recommendation? If they're saying things like, go see your family physician and make sure that it's appropriate for you if you have any health concerns and that sort of thing. Somebody I know, I haven't seen him for a while, and just a few weeks ago I saw him, and he's in his 80s. He hasn't been getting vaccinated against COVID-19. He watches Fox News. This is happening here in Canada, and so that's his source. They're saying the whole thing is nonsense. And so, according to what he's seen on there, so I told him that he really should talk to his physician about it, and he's done that. And he's got his first vaccine now. I was able to convince him. I told him, look, this is one communication style I found that worked really well, to say, this is the lazy solution. You know, be lazy, get vaccinated. Then you don't have to fight it the hard way. And you don't have to end up with long-term side effects like the taste of something that everything tastes like sewage, including water, then for the rest of your life, because some people have had that. And that stopped him right there. That's what got him. He didn't want everything to taste like sewage. So it's different for each person again. Otherwise, I'd list off some other side effects. And he's got a heart condition. So he went to talk to his family physician about it, because to make sure he can get that with his heart condition. I thought, okay, I'm not aware of that, but best thing, talk to your physician, because your physician knows your case. And so his physician apparently was quite happy, and they arranged it so he could get vaccinated right away, no delays. You know, when someone's in the mood for it, take advantage of it. This is what you got to do, right?
Yeah, I can go on forever and ever about vaccines. That's kind of what I spent the most time in the past, probably 5 or 6 years, talking with people about. And where a lot of this comes from, and a lot of the anti-science or counter-mainstream science.
Yeah. He did intentional fraud. You know, originally he got the whole anti-vax movement started, I think.
Yeah, but he's. Yeah, I mean, we say that, right? But people are like, well, he found this connection, and then he got his medical license revoked, and they're hiding it, and protecting it, and the Lancet is in on it, and you know, it's the whole thing, right? And it's like at some point you expect people to stop and say, either I'm wrong, or the whole world is in on this.
And the challenge here that you're underlying with this whole show is how to reach out to people who favor him and help them to understand and look at things in a different way. You know, I saw a cartoon that I'm trying to find this comic. I've lost it, but it showed a woman talking to her doctor, and he's got one paper on his desk, and he's got 1,000. So he's got a whole mountain of paper on his desk. And he's explaining to her that there's all these research papers that show that vaccines don't cause autism, and there's one that does. And he's just kind of pulling it out. She's, aha, I knew it. And she's pulling it away. Sometimes these people, this is what they want to see. And it's how to reach out to them is the hardest. Those are the hardest challenges, I think.
Yeah. So I think we'll eventually go into specifics, cherry picking and confirmation bias and some of the more technical aspects of it down the road here. But no, you're right. And now the people that are already interested and willing to learn, to the work involved in communicating with them, it's not a high barrier. There's not a lot, right? There's a lot of people that are already kind of on your side, so to speak.
Finding a way their learning style is helpful in getting there sooner.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
But if you really want to be a person that de-radicalizes, and I think that's the appropriate term for people that are the one, like you were saying, picking up this one piece of information that's counter to, mountains of mainstream evidence. It's no different whether you're an anti-vaxxer or, a political conspiracy theorist who thinks that, half of the country is, trying to steal the count or whatever, because you're looking at the, you're finding the evidence that you want to see. So if you really want to be the people that reach them, it's a whole different ball game, and the amount of effort and time and patience that it takes to make any progress and headway there. But it can be done, and I don't blame people for not doing it. Right, it's not everybody's job, and it shouldn't be everybody's job, and we're not all good at it. And even if we are and we were, some days some days you have the patience, and some days you don't. I think what we do need to get better at is recognizing our strengths and weaknesses, and understanding that putting forward flawed and fallacious and problematic arguments and attacking people for being wrong is worsening the situation.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's better to avoid that conversation and not have it at all, rather than further entrench people, which is what we're doing when we attack them.
Yep, the put downs and the laughing at them is not helping. That's for sure.
It's making it worse.
It just makes it a more hostile environment. And then, of course, they're going to dig in their heels, and they're not going to listen to anything at that. They're just thinking, oh, this guy just wants to attack me or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not going to go anywhere. Be complete waste of time for everyone. Then you'll start hearing axioms like, oh, we just agree to disagree. That's giving up. That's not. Yeah.
There's some things that you just can't agree to disagree on.
That's right.
And now, there's some things that are very controversial, like should children be vaccinated, right? I think it's a conversation to be had on whether there's mandatory vaccines, and governments have taken steps to do so in terms of participating in government institutions like public education. You have to be vaccinated to get in a public school. But should we make it mandatory for everybody? Because we can prove scientifically that a vaccinated nation is, a far healthier nation, right? But how do we? Is it better to convince somebody that that's the case, or force it upon them and hope that they take it on board down the line? If you normalize it, then people will accept it over time. But I just don't know if that's how things should be done.
It's hard. I think the anti-mask movement was started by Donald Trump when he said CDC recommendation says it's optional, so he's not going to wear a mask. He missed a golden opportunity there to say America. He could have said something quite different, and they would be in a very different situation today. Like if he had said, here we've got an opportunity to everybody who wears masks. I'm going to wear this mask too, and the virus is going to be dead. We're going to be ahead of all the other countries. Let's all get into this together. We wouldn't have the vaccine crisis that we're having, or the COVID-19 crisis that we're having now. It would be pretty much obliterated. And so the anti-vaxxers jumped on that bandwagon, and they I was just talking with one on Discord, text chatting with them a few days ago about this kind of thing, and I was pointing out to them, look, over 90% of Canada of Canadians are vaccinated, and so it's that last 10% that is really the government here is even wanting to use a more gentle approach, like what you're advocating for. And I think this is really good if it can help people. The thing is, I was asking this anti-vaxxer guy who he claims he's not anti-vax, and then of course he's against the vaccine. It's just it's confusing talking with them sometimes. But I was asking him, so what do you think would be better and more effective than using the mandate to get everybody vaccinated? And his response was, leave us the hell alone. And that's not an uncommon response. I've had this from others in conversations with them. And I'm thinking, the last year and a half to 2 years, that's what's been happening. Nobody's been forcing this on you. People have been generally leaving you alone. It's not working. That's obviously not the solution, because when people are catching this virus and it spreads for a couple of people, it's evolving significantly enough to be identified as a new strain that requires a new set of vaccines. So this is really not working for us. And then, everybody else is vaccinated, sure, but then we all have to get these boosters against this, so we can still catch it. We can still get sick from it. We do a lot better now that we're immunized, vaccinated, but it's a problem. And trying to convince somebody like that, I'm finding it is a challenge. It's not going. It's not happening. And they're very clear on their view on it, and they're absolutely not going to go. And this is the anti-vax community, I find, is quite a lot like this.
Yeah,
that's the tough nut to crack.
Theo says there's a lot of believers in esoterics and alternative homeopathy guys who can't be convinced.
There was somebody here who got a homeopathic vaccine, and they couldn't get the card to show that they were vaccinated, because the government here told them that what they said the government told them is that it's not an approved vaccine, so they couldn't get it. So, well, it is homeopathic, so of course it's not approved.
I can't help but wonder if the people who are getting homeopathic medicines, so we call it CAM, complementary and alternative medicines.
Okay.
But it could also be described, there's another acronym is SCAM, because that's what it is. But it's supplemental, complementary, and alternative medicines, right? But I can't help but wonder if people who get homeopathic products understand what they're actually getting, right? Because I feel like people
they know it's mostly water, and some of them even have told me that the placebo effect is real and it actually does cure people. So that some of them have told me that the homeopathic remedies are all about triggering the placebo effect so the body can heal itself. That's what some of them have told me.
Yeah, I've heard that, and then I think a lot of people are just afraid of chemicals and things that we don't understand, and big words on medical labels that are not explained very well. And so you find these
things that they don't understand, because there are mountains of research behind aspirin working, behind all these other different things, and vaccines and whatnot, and all kinds of medications and birth control medications. The list goes on and on and on, right?
Yeah, but if you're in the community that is talking about holistic medicines, and chiropractic, and homeopathy, and the list goes on and on, right? But if you're in that community, then you're going to look at these medicines as a less toxic version of the same medicine, or the same type of medicine, but without the harmful chemicals.
Yeah, and Iptivus just put up a wonderful comment that placebos, by definition, aren't lasting, but only temporary. And I think that's true. There's I tried to direct some people who I've talked about with this before I realized that they're a whole community, like you're saying, and which I think is correct. They are. They to a website called quackwatch.org. Hello, John Edwards. And
what was that website again?
So Quackwatch, QUAC.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, it's really high quality, because the articles that they put there, that they publish there, include references, journal references to actual credible scientific research. So it's quite good, and they explain all this. It's very technical though. And so I think for the average consumer, it can be hard to digest the information on there. But if people can get into it, it's really helpful. They've also got some articles that are really well written for the laypersons, like 21 signs, red flags to watch out for when you have that you're dealing with a product that's probably not that's not what you think it is. And one of the keywords that comes on there is it'll detoxify your liver or something like that. So yeah. Yeah. Those are one of the red flags. Yeah, but getting people onto it, the response I get when I try to tell people about it is like, "Oh, we don't like that website. It's no good. It's terrible." So
Yeah, that's
there's a
these
divide here.
websites.
We need to bridge this divide. It's really that's the challenge.
These websites where we intentionally went out of our way to put a very off-putting name on the website or the article or whatever.
Yeah.
It's fine to set yourself apart and to attack the charlatans, but you're not doing yourself any favors in the long run with people that are on the fence, because it's already abrasive right off the bat. I I'm probably going to spend a lot of time talking about vaccines because I think the anti-vax community, the reasons that they are anti-vax is deeper than that. It's not. I don't think that it actually starts at vaccines. I think it's levels beneath that causes
So
them.
you think it didn't start with Andrew Wakefield? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm thinking I think that the reason people are hesitant, vaccine hesitant, or anti-vax doesn't have a lot to do with the vaccine itself.
Sure, I agree with that. Yeah.
I think it has a lot more to do with fear and distrust and misunderstanding, and a lot of it's religion. A lot of anti-vaxxers are creationists.
I've noticed. Yeah, it's quite common.
So there's a lot more to it that you have to dig through and kind of get down into to address that. I had a conversation with the anti-vaxxer who 15 minutes into the conversation, you find out they're a creationist and a flat earther, and they believe in literal demons came and taught in the 1600s that the earth was round, and that's why we believe it's round. So it's like, wow. Okay, the scope of this conversation has broadened so far that vaccines are the least of the they're probably the most like actual the relevant problem of the field of knowledge from that person, but they're talking about that is going to have absolutely no impact based on their other beliefs.
I've noticed that different approaches will work with different people. Some people need the aggressive kind of presenter to really get the point through. But I think you've identified there's a large group of people who a different approach is needed, and we're not really seeing this kind of gentler approach being used very much. And it is the approach I like to try to use as well. And so, I'm really glad that you're doing this. I haven't really thought about doing this with things like vaccines and medicine and other ideas. I've only been thinking about that within the realm of atheism. So you've given me something to think about here on how to approach this in different ways. And I have a feeling that as I look into this with different things like vaccines and whatnot, that it will probably help me with the regular advocacy that I'm doing as well with atheism. So I'm glad that you're doing this. I think this is great.
I think all of those fields or topics, the reasons and justifications and the type of arguments and rationales given for believing in them is all overlapping. And yeah, and I don't mean like somebody is a Christian the same way that they're an anti-vaxxer. But there's a lot of times there's if you're talking about somebody who distrusts the government, and then we have and so they're like politically right wing, right? But then they're also an anti-vaxxer because they don't trust the government. The government's really poor at communicating science, and they don't. And then so maybe their church has a better community than their local governmental organizations, and I think a lot of it goes hand in hand, and a lot of the reasons, the logic that leads us into these beliefs are very similar to a lot of them. So I think I wouldn't say that like understanding one helps you understand all of them. I think it's too far. But if you kind of break it all down and you can kind of get into the justifications that people use to hold on to these beliefs like anti-vax, you see the same reasoning used elsewhere.
Yeah. I think key to this is going to be understanding the different ways people latch on to new ideas and learn, and because of different learning styles is probably going to be a big help in all of this. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I'm sure you have some ideas yourself on how to proceed with
Yeah,
it.
you've mentioned learning styles a few times, and
Well, having two types of dyslexia, I have one for reading, one for hearing. When I was a kid, it was a problem for me. I had a very different learning style from my fellow students, so that's kind of why it's an important theme for me. I'm
yeah,
a bit biased here.
I see these videos go viral on social media of like, a hip hop teacher or a teacher teaching math and geography through music.
Mhm.
And I think that's really awesome. It's just unfortunate that, like I said in the beginning, it's just so much more time and effort and resources to communicate in all these different styles and different ways. Because if you have a visual or audible learner, or if you do try to you make fancy slides and animations. There's that popular YouTube channel, in a nutshell. I don't know how to say the German name. It does like really awesome animations for topics. It's like Kurtzke something.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyways, but they do like a lot of science stuff, right? But
Yeah.
their animations are thousands and thousands of dollars, and it takes them a whole month and many people to complete. And so it's like for a 10-minute video, they're really effective, and you can really learn from it because you can visualize it, and they explain it in very well. But teachers don't have those resources, and your average YouTuber or your average nonprofit organization, just say it how it's spelled, Kurzgesagt. That's it. Kurzgesagt.
That's great. We have a spelling on screen now. That's fantastic.
But just the average person doesn't have that. So we have to work around these limitations and just utilize more efficiently the tools that we do have available. If we can't generate primary sources firsthand, maybe we can watch a video, not link them to it, but like watch it with them, because we can do that now.
Yeah, that can be better because then you can at least have an interactive audience experience.
Yeah, watch it with them or read an article with them,
Yeah.
or just have this more engaged experience where you're doing something together, and they're more likely to take on board the sources that you're offering them.
And I think a long-term strategy is increasing the amount of critical thinking curriculum in the school systems, in public education, and like here in British Columbia, Canada, they've been doing this, gradually adding it here, and we've noticed it coming through the curriculum with our own kids. So it is really being added in there. It's good. It goes into the English class primarily. But that makes sense because you need to process what you're reading. So, this is more long term, though. Short term, I think, that's been a different side. And what you're talking about with that hip hop video teaching, what was it, math?
Yeah, I've seen a few of them, but I think one
Yeah.
of them was I think one of them was math, and one was geography. I
Okay.
don't remember.
Yeah.
It's been a while, but
So this is great for people who can learn in that kind of style. Fantastic. It's another approach to teaching. Um, I'm pretty sure we're not going to ever find one style that's going to work for everyone, you know?
what I think the what really works for that style is that it's fun and engaging.
Yeah. And
It's not dry, right? So you're getting people involved. They're kids, so they're making loud noises. They're dancing and singing. And they, for some reason, our brains are really good at learning song lyrics, way more than I can remember 50 states any day.
I can tell you, I'm sure it'll be successful in many school scenarios. I don't think it will be successful with all students, but I think
Right.
it will definitely catch a lot. And
Yeah.
it'll be, and it's new and it's different. It makes it interesting too. And keeping
Right.
engaged is a big part of it.
No, yeah, I didn't think about it that way. If that was how you did every class every single day, it would be pretty rough, really
Yeah,
quick.
more variety in this will certainly help a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we go, I want to shout out one website that I know of,
Sure.
because I know the person that runs it. There's this if for me, the go-to vaccine, it's kind of like a blog post / article / website, but it's called skepticraptor.com.
Oh, Skeptic Raptor. I think that's the one who has an account I see on YouTube sometimes.
So I don't know if he gets around on YouTube that much, but
Okay.
he's very, very educated in vaccines. And then he also has a contributor, Dorrit Reese, I think is her name. And she was a professor who really specializes in this and writes a lot of articles and stuff about it and is very involved. Let me see if I can post the link.
Yeah, somebody's asking. John Edwards is asking you to post it in the YouTube live chat as well. If the Skeptical Raptor is the one I think it is, then yeah, they're really good. Yeah. They probably are. I don't think there's very many people out there using that name.
No, he's been around for a long time, and I've communicated with them a long time for
probably the
a
one
lot
I'm
of time.
Sure.
But so he's on Facebook a lot, but there's a lot of people like that. But again, you pointed to Quackwatch, but it's like I think we do a disservice to ourselves with these names sometimes. You don't think about it, but
and it doesn't create a scenario where people feel comfortable talking with other people. They end up on the defensive right away, and that's not a good way to start.
Right. Yeah. So well, if you want to join some other time for this, you're more than welcome to. We'll keep this conversation going, and we'll keep keep this series going either on here or on my new channel when I am able to stream from it, when YouTube says I'm not a robot or something. We'll keep doing that, and then we'll get more people involved. I got a couple other people that I talked to that are willing to come on and chat about it. What I'm trying to do is talk to people that are more, I don't know how to describe it, like more on the field in these communities, like your average person or moderators or people that are active in communities that are counter to their positions. So they have a lot of experience with communicating with people with opposing views, and navigating that is a lot different than the way that we typically either seek out people with opposing views, or when they come to us, we talk to them, but we don't really hang out in those spaces all the time, like I have seen some people do. And I'm interested in getting their viewpoint, and kind of seeing their how that's working out for them and their thoughts and opinions on how to improve this communication across the aisle, so to speak. So I think that'll be interesting going forward.
If I see somebody who will fit for that, I'll try to send them your way.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know I don't know how often it's going to be or anything like that, but I'll try to. I like the topic, and I think there's a lot to talk about, and we can dig into specifics like vaccines or any other alternative medicines or just like anti-scientific stuff.
Yeah.
And I'll bring up a lot more information on the science behind effective communication. I think that's going to be really helpful.
I think it's an important topic because what you'll be doing in the long run is helping to bridge the divide between all of us, and it'll be quite good. One person you might want to bring on is J.L. Warren. He goes by, his YouTube channel is called Bridge the Divide. This is what he wants to do. He might be a good one. If you're not familiar with him, I'd be happy to introduce you. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, let's do that. And I want to. Yeah, we've come a long way as a community. Yeah.
If we can call ourselves that, from the days of Hitchens and Dawkins and Harris and the people that were very abrasive, and probably because they had to be, because it was the only way to survive in that social environment. And there's a lot of people who've maintained that mentality and maintained that approach. And I'm not saying that we need to drop it all together or change overnight or anything like that, but I think there needs to be more room for more approaches if there's any chance of reaching more people.
Yes, yeah, that is so important. And to do it in a way that's welcoming rather than confrontational. So try to use a gentle, non-confrontational approach is really good, because then people will feel safe. They feel like they're not going to be under attack. It's really a lot easier to converse with people this way.
Yeah, there's a term called calling in versus calling out.
Okay.
So calling out is basically publicly telling somebody they're wrong, and kind of like correcting them in public for it, right? And so that it gets, you're kind of relying on the embarrassment to make a more of an impact.
It has an element of humiliation.
Yeah. So, and calling in is a reaching out privately and communicating with that person in a way to try to bring them on board on your team, even if you don't see eye to eye. Just privately building that connection.
Yeah.
So that doesn't count, across the board, but that's kind of the idea. Is if you got to know when to do which, because there's a time and place for different approaches. And the whole scattershot, one way of doing things, just doesn't seem to be working very well for us.
Oh yeah.
All right, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you for joining me, and
it was a pleasure.
I hope to do this again sometime.
Yeah, me too. I'd like that. I think that you've got a great idea here, and I want to see it become successful and influential. I hope more people will strive to do this.
Somebody said something good about me, so you'll be on the screen for the rest of the show.
Hey, that's a perk.
I said a true thing. All right, thank you everybody for joining, and we'll be back again, and we'll get the announcements out sooner next time for sure, and we'll keep this conversation going.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.